Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unveil Your Voice podcast this week. And we hope you've really been enjoying the podcast. And we just love all the guests that we have been having so far. And today we're really honored for the two guests that will be joining us today. They are two brothers that have an incredible stories to share. Both are truly different stories from each side, but they are doing something amazing to help others share their story. Just also want to give our regular disclaimer. We do openly discuss trauma, and so we want you to feel comfortable. We want you to take care of yourself. So if you are feeling triggered at any moment during the conversation today here on the podcast, we just ask that you press pause, take time for yourself, and care for yourself. If you want to listen with a trusted friend, please feel free to do so. But without further ado, we are so excited for our guests today, and we'll see you on the other side. My name is Christine Irwin, and I'm the founder of the nonprofit Voices of Hope. Our mission is to change our culture one voice at a time through education, campaigns, and kindness. Each week, I will share an inspiring interview from individuals who have overcome trauma and seek to make a change in the world. Hear them now as they unveil their voice. This week to the Unveil Your Voice podcast. We are so excited for our guests that we are having joining us this week. Today, we have the opportunity to meet two brothers whose lives went very different paths. Both have dealt with their own traumatic experiences, and somewhere within the trauma of their lives, they have forgotten what they once knew to be true, and that was their inherent value as people and the value in their own story. They now have found that value. They have made it their mission to help others remember and never forget that their story matters. Their story is worth telling. If my story means something and your story means something, then all of our stories mean something. Our stories have value. I am truly honored to introduce our guests today, Ralph and Jose, the founders of We Are All One Story. Ralph and Jose, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
You both are so welcome. So, let's kind of jump right in. And I kind of always start the podcast out with this particular question. And I do it because it's kind of what Unveil Your Voice is all about. It is about sharing your story. But obviously, you saw that there was something that needed to be changed, whether that was in yourself, whether that was outside of yourself, wherever that may be. So I wanted to know from your perspectives, what was the problem that you saw and how did you plan to change that?
I think it wasn't initially a problem that I saw outside. I think it was more internal, and it was just losing my own value in my own story, feeling that I didn't have value as a person, and looking back at my story and thinking that my story was not meaningful and that it wasn't worth sharing and that it wasn't worth telling.
Yeah.
If there was a problem actually that I did see is during the conceptual phase of We're All One Story, I would just always walk around and I see people smiling, having a great time, and all the talk is on the surface. All the talk is small talk, and the way I was feeling inside was the opposite of what I would see. I was like, there's got to be more to life than just your 9 to 5, going to work, coming back, and really never getting to know anybody else. So I think that, once I refound the value in my own story, that's where the problem was, that not enough people hear that. We know that it's true. We know within us that our values have story inherently. Somebody doesn't need to tell you that. As soon as you hear it, you believe it because it's true. But we just don't hear it enough.
Yeah.
And for me, the things that I've been able to accomplish in life, people have always pulled to me and wanted to hear my story. And somewhere along the lines, like I had lost that value. And so I was kind of like just going through the motions. But I had always been interested in other people's story because my experiences are my experiences and other people's are experiences. It's theirs and how they responded to those situations were just as important to me as how I responded to them.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started this, I just knew that, you know, if I could help this in any way possible, I was going to do that.
Wow. You know, it's interesting in, you know, I know both of your stories are very different, and I know both of your stories are obviously, you know, different than mine as well. But from what you both said, you know, I can also see myself in both of those in situations, obviously with different experiences, you know. I was thinking in my head when you were saying, you know, both of you were saying these things, you know, there were times in my life where I felt my story wasn't valuable enough, which then made me feel not valuable. And then there were also times in my life where, you know, I started sharing my story, and I was sharing it a lot, where I just started going through those motions. And, you know, I've even recently in my own experience just had kind of, I guess you could call it an epiphany. I don't know if that's the right word, but I just, I like sharing my story and I like getting it out there. But as you both, you know, say, everybody's story has value. And so now I have turned it, especially with the podcast, that I want people to be able to come on and share their story, share what they're doing to help get that out there. And so that's why I really value what you're doing. If you both wouldn't mind, I mean, obviously I know you've shared both of your stories before, but if you both wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of each of your stories, just for our listeners out there who maybe are unfamiliar with We Are All One Story, I would greatly appreciate it if you're comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Ralph here. So I'm a retired Marine after 14 years. I was injured in combat in June of 2012, and I lost both my legs above the knee.
Wow.
4 years later, I was able to win a Paralympic gold medal in the sport of sled hockey. And and after that, that's when a lot of people started searching for my story.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And congratulations on the gold medal, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. And Jose, I'll let you go.
Yeah, so Jose here. You know, me and Ralph have a lot of similarities in our stories, but just, you know, different circumstances. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, in the Harbor area. I ended up joining a gang when I was 16. I went to prison when I was 18 and a half, and I did a 4-year sentence. I did 4 years out of a 5-year sentence. After getting released from prison, you know, it was a hard time transitioning from a prison and just a consistent background with just where violence is normal and transitioning into normal society. And that in of itself took years for me to finally transition into.
Mm-hmm.
And now currently I'm here, and what I do full time is I travel the States and I listen to people's stories and I share them through We Are All One Story.
That's amazing. It's so tremendous. Like just like, and I told you both even before we started recording, I just think it's great what you're doing, what you both are doing with not only sharing your own stories, but allowing people to share their stories as well. So one thing I did want to ask, when you both initially started to share your story, what was that feeling like for you?
For me, it was very freeing.
Mm-hmm.
The moment I was able to put my story out into the universe, it was the moment I kind of took ownership of my story. And it was very freeing because at that point in time, like, I knew that it was out there and there was nothing no one else can say because I already said it. And
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, it was just like a ton of bricks off my shoulder.
Wow. That's very cool.
For me, you know, I haven't done the interview, you know, since I do the interviews on We Are All One Story. I had the pleasure of interviewing Ralph, my brother, him sharing his story through the platform. But what I ask people to do, I've actually written it down in story form, in a true narrative form, and we're working on publishing that book and having that ready to go by the end of the year. But how that felt for me, just sitting down and writing out my story, I felt that I had two options. to look at it negatively or to look at it positively.
Yeah.
And when I sat down and to really write my story out, every time before I would write, I asked that I write this story through the lens of love and hope.
Yeah.
That I look at my life through that lens, because I can, beyond a doubt, look at it through the negative lens, and that story will be just as much true. But once I did that, I mean, I let out so many emotions. I went through, because I had to relive the trauma. I had to, when I write, it's pretty much, it's an emotional experience, and it's pretty intense, but it's all these emotions that I've kept in that I finally get to release. And that in of itself was empowering for myself. And, you know, that's why I know that it's something special when people are able to see their own story in the narrative form through a positive lens.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's great. The lens that you look through to write that out. Now, because I did see that on the website. Can you give any, so you said the book will probably be out sometime by the end of the year?
Yeah, so we had to, we just had to replan that. And, you know, when we set out to do this, I mean, we made a pretty ambitious plan. And one of the factors in that was the book. It's just, we're going to have to push that towards the end of this year.
Got it. No, that's amazing. Well, when it does come out, I mean, I will be a huge supporter. I will share it. I'm really excited. I think, you know, and you both brought interesting points up. You know, Jose, you talked about writing out your story, and Ralph, you talked about speaking and sharing your story that way. And I just know this even from my own experience. I know from speaking, it was kind of goes back to, you know, kind of Jose, Jose, you were saying this earlier, I believe, where, you know, you kind of, you know, were sharing so much. And so one thing that I was thinking too is that I know when I speak, I got into that phase, okay, I'm totally comfortable speaking. And then the one day I sat down to write, and it was totally kind of like what you said, Jose, you know, it was very re-traumatizing. It was very an emotional ride, writing that all out. So when I in turn turned to write as opposed to speaking, I mean, that was a totally different ballgame. I mean, I wasn't riding that emotional roller coaster anymore from speaking. I was now riding the emotional roller coaster from writing. And so do you both feel that, you know, depending how you choose to share your story, you know, could, you know, affect, you know, how you're feeling about that, or feeling, you know, being re-traumatized, or different things, like if you choose different ways to share your story, or even someone, you know, within the platform that's sharing their story with We Are All One Story, you know, maybe they're sharing their story through the platform and then go to share it another way. Do you feel that that's something that could happen throughout that? Maybe they could go through that emotional roller coaster again.
I mean, as for me, you know, like you say, anytime I speak my story, like I do have to relive those events. However, the change is just taking ownership of it. Like there's nothing you can do to change your story, you know? And so the more comfortable you can get with those emotions, I think every time I tell it, I get more and more comfortable. And that just comes with having to deal with that more on not a daily basis, but more often, you know? And so, and then, you know, there's also, the feeling after when I talk to people and they come up to me and they tell me how much they relate to me, and you know, that they're happy that someone can speak on their behalf because they couldn't, but they can understand that I have a similar story as to theirs. And so, that helped me a lot of the ways to know that I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay, very good. No, thank you for that. Well, one thing I kind of wanted to ask both of you as well is, so I think I kind of have an idea, but I wanted to share it with our listeners. But I think I have an idea of what kind of impact you want to make, but I wanted to learn from you. What type of impact do you both hope to make with We Are All One Story?
You know, it's funny that you know, when I first started this, it was a little bit different. But as we started doing all the project and a lot of interviews came out, what I realized is that it's the ability to start a conversation with your life that you didn't want to have beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you expose a lot of that stuff and you become vulnerable and you speak truths, the people that watch your video are going to want to engage now with what you just said. And so I feel like there was like a lot of conversations I never had with my mom or sisters or father and stuff like that. And so that just opened that door. And so I wanted to be able to, you know, share that experience with people, being able to open that door and find the value in their story, and for the people that are with them to find the value in that story too. I mean, there was a lot of friends that didn't know a whole lot about me. And when I let my story go, it was like they got into the inner me and they felt like they knew me a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel that, I mean, I don't just feel, I know that anytime we talk about We're All One Story and we're doing the work, going through the day-to-days, we see that the impact is positive all the way around, however small, however big. But if I have one goal, if my main goal is for people to realize their inherent values, people, you know, people, for some reason, a lot of people, you know, sometimes I ask people to share their story, and one of the answers I get is, well, I don't really think I have a good story, or my story's not nobody will care. And that's actually not the case.
Yeah.
That if you sit down and you look through your life is actually pretty amazing. And from you being born to all the way to where you're at, I mean, I know what it's like to be in a deep depression and not have value in myself as a person or in my story, and the extreme of that to want to take my own life. So that's really the birthplace of all this. So we're at the other end of it now, where your story does have meaning and it does have value. And the hope is that, you know, that you're never at a place where you think your story isn't meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you get that a lot, where when you are, you know, inquiring or asking people to share their story? I was just curious, because I feel like a lot of people are like that, where they do feel like their story, you know, thinking back on their own life, oh, you know, I don't want to say that nothing, this might, I hope I'm phrasing this correctly, but some people might think like, oh, my, you know, like my story doesn't really matter, or, you know, nothing pivotal, you know, happened in my life, or whatever the case may be. I mean, do you get that a lot when you're inquiring for individuals to share their stories?
Oftentimes I do. I mean, now a lot of the people we interview, they reach out to us at this point. But sometimes if I'm having a conversation and I do just bring it up, and I do get that answer, that's when that's what segue into discussion, which is just essentially me telling them what we believe in, which is just that, you know, you may think that your story doesn't have meaning, but it indeed does. It doesn't matter if you think you've had a cookie cutter life. The emotions that you felt in your life are just as real as the emotions I felt and the emotions that Ralph's felt. The trauma, however big or small in your life, is the same on an emotional level, what I felt and what Ralph felt. And when we go tell people that, you know, a lot of times something clicks in their head and they're like, you know what? It's true, because the emotions that we feel are relative to our events and to our individual lives.
Yeah. Wow. It's okay. Please forgive me. I can be very cheesy. My husband will say I'm very cheesy, and I'm just saying this because I feel like I'm getting chills just from these things that you both are saying. And, you know, I recently, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I had like somewhat of an epiphany, but like even with kind of what you said, you know, no matter what anybody has gone through, whether it's a cookie cutter type of life that they think it is, but they've had these emotions, they've had these feelings. You know, I recently, you know, I had this conversation with myself, even just like about my own mother, and that I said to myself, I am tired of having mediocre conversations with even family members. And, you know, and the reason I'm bringing up my mother is just because, you know, there were things throughout my trauma that we didn't talk about, then through other things I with, whether that was eating disorders, depression, whatever it was, that I didn't talk about. And it literally was one evening where I was having a really negative self-talk going in my own mind. And I said to myself, I'm sick and tired of not talking to people even about the challenges that I'm facing currently and not being open about them, about the small talk, don't get me wrong. I love to check in on my family members and I want to make sure they're okay. But, I want more than that. I want more than just like a text, like, hey, how you doing? No, really, how are you doing?
Right.
It's just, I don't think that we have enough of these types of conversations. So it's just, I think, with both of you out there and getting these stories and sharing them is just so impactful and so inspiring, and that hopefully it will help others, even if they don't contribute their story to We Are All One Story, that it'll help others see and want to share their story in some way or another. Right. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there for a second. So with, We Are All One Story, when you started it, what struggles did you have with it starting up We Are All One Story?
All the struggles were internal. Mm-hmm. I think, we got over, like, it's a little bit hard to explain, but the initial struggles that we had, none of them have been what you would think that struggles come within a project. I think we have, as far as the project is concerned, we have a vision and we have all the means to execute that vision. Yeah. So we don't have any struggles as far as infrastructure, finances, mm-hmm. Or anything like that. The struggle in the beginning was believing in my own story. Mm. That was the struggle. Yeah. And once I got past that, everything started somewhat flowing naturally, and it just believing again and again. There's struggles. I'm not a licensed therapist or psychologist, so there's a struggle when during the interviews and people open their hearts to me and I have my heart open listening, mm-hmm. and detaching myself from the outcome of their life and just sharing their story. Mm-hmm. And just knowing that I'm just here to listen and to share, and trying to compartmentalize it that way. But, naturally you have emotional connections when someone tells you their life story. Yeah. That's just a learning process that I do happily, that I learn happily. That's for sure a blessing to me, because it's therapeutic to myself in my life. But I would say the struggles were internal. The biggest one was believing in my own story. Mm-hmm. And after that, everything rolled,
Yeah. No, that's good.
I feel the same.
Yeah.
I feel the same for sure. Once I realized the value of my own story, I felt like there was nothing that could stop us but ourselves.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really powerful. And once I feel like that's something that many people, they need to realize the own value in their story. And that can be a big hurdle to get over. But, it's amazing to see once you got there what you're doing now. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about struggles. Tell me about the success that you've had with We Are All One Story. What you're proud of in the moment that you're in right now with We Are All One Story.
I mean, each interview, mm-hmm. That's the heart and soul. I mean, it's just crazy. Like when we had the vision, had the plan, and we had meetings and we talked. I mean, I have my little brother, Roger. He helps us a lot on the technical side, and he's a part of We Are All One Story as well. So he would be in these meetings, and we just talk conceptually, mm-hmm. seriously conceptually on what we need to do. And one of the things that we said is, hey, we're just going to put it out there and people will come to us to share their story, because we felt naturally this is what people want to do. Mm-hmm. That know that there's power in their story, and they naturally know that there's healing in sharing it. And the biggest success that I feel is that when that happened, when the first person reached out to us and said, I would like for you to share my story, it was amazing because I would have never thought. I didn't, and it happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great.
And so that ball's just kept on rolling. So, I think that's probably the biggest success is a person seeing the platform, seeing the message, and then putting themselves out there, because we know how hard it is to share your story, that it's not anything easy.
Yeah.
So I think that's for me probably one of the biggest successes.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree any more. The power behind We Are All One Stories and the vulnerability and the honesty of, people being able to tell their stories. And I think anytime someone is able to do that, it's a check in the win box for us. And every story matters. And every time we drop one, I have the same feeling. So
yeah,
it's amazing.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool. And it's so great to see just how, like you said, how quickly you started getting responses of people that wanted to share their story. So when somebody is open and they want to share their story, do you provide advice? And if so, if someone's coming to you and they want to share your story, or you're asking somebody to share their story, what kind of advice do you provide to them, prior to sharing their story, if any?
I mean, sometimes, I'll shoot about half of the questions, since the questions are serious. And I do want the interview to know, if I don't know them or if they're not familiar with the platform, I would like them to have a general idea of that there is a level of seriousness to the interview. But for the most part, the only advice I give is that you share your story with 100% honesty, and that's it. And I feel that if you do that, that's where the empowerment is.
Yeah.
And that's really the only advice I give. Hey, you're going to answer how you answer, however you answer. Just make sure it's 100% honest, and then we just go from there.
Nice. Very good. I was going to say, when you go to interview individuals, so how does the process kind of work? And I'm asking just for listeners out there that may want to reach out and share their story. If someone reaches out, they want to share their story, how does the process work? How would it start, I guess, from beginning when someone reaches out, wants to share their story, to the kind of final end product?
So how does it work initially? So if someone would like to share their story, usually they'll reach out to us through our Instagram page. So you'll just direct message us at our Instagram, which is We Are All One Story. From there, we'll start a very quick email correspondence just to see a small level of commitment. So after that, we'll email each other, and then we'll set a date and we'll get the interview done.
Nice. Very good. Now I know, just because I've, I've been on your website, I've been on your YouTube page and kind of checking out some of the stories that some individuals you've already interviewed. Now, are typically all the, individuals sharing their story, are they interviewed via video?
Yeah, everyone is, as of right now, everyone is via video. Okay. But if someone wants to share their story and they're not comfortable being videotaped, we can get past that hurdle, and we'll still hear their story if that's an issue.
No, that's awesome. That's good to know. Perfect. So one thing, the other thing I wanted to see too is just learn from both of you. If you had to, like, I guess I could say, like, if someone was inquiring about We Are One Story and you wanted to maybe highlight, what you've done so far, what would you direct them to?
I mean, I think it's an ecosystem. So ideally, I would want them to look at the Instagram, the website, and the YouTube, and have that interactive experience.
No, that makes sense. And do you have a set number of stories you're hoping to share, like maybe by the end of this year?
There's no set number. I'm not a big numbers guy.
Yeah.
But we do have a system. I mean, we have every chapter we do 6 people, so that's 6 stories, and then we have a break. So every week we have a new story. We'll take a 2-week break, then we reload on the next chapter, and we keep on going like that.
Nice. Very good. Now, are they from all, and the one thing I wanted to ask, just because I wasn't 100% sure, but are they from like all over the nation or from a specific area?
All over the United States right now, but what's most logistically easy for us is going to be Denver, San Antonio, Texas, and Los Angeles.
Okay, perfect. So if anybody's in those areas and you want to share your story, those are the best for logistic purposes.
Yeah, but for logistic purposes. But if somebody reaches out from Wyoming, we'll book a flight to my Wyoming and we'll get it done.
No, that's awesome. Oh, that's very, very cool that you're open to getting out there to help people share their stories. And I just love the idea that everybody does have value in their stories. So I know obviously with the book, hopefully at the end of this year, continue to share individual stories. Any future sites of where you want to see We Are All One Story, where you want to see it go?
We want to see this message spread impactfully across the world. So right now we're starting in the States. I mean, we're trying to get to the hundreds of millions of followers, of subscribers, meaning that's hundreds of millions of people who are seeing a message of empowerment within their own story.
Mm-hmm. No, well, listen, I'll do whatever I can to help share that and get your word out there. I know I can make somewhat of an impact, but I will definitely share.
We need all the help. Good.
And even when the book comes out, I'll share that. I'm all about working with each other because everybody's doing.
I'll send you the book first, and hopefully it's any good. Yes. Hopefully you like it. I don't want you promoting a book that you're not behind.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you do like a pre-launch, and I can help promote with the pre-launch.
Definitely.
No, seriously, I truly would love it. I can tell already just from having this conversation, it's going to make such an impact. And I'll speak from my own experience because I do have a book out there of my own story and the kind of the community around me that also experienced secondary trauma from my trauma. And I will tell you, it's a very nerve-wracking experience. Not only the writing part, but then getting it out there in the world.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would love to read it. I would love to help. Promote it in any way I can. I think it's tremendous. So, last couple of things, because we'll get ready to wrap up shortly, but I wanted to see if you both want to share anything about, We Are All One Story. If you had one thing to share about it with our listeners out there, what would be one thing that you would want to share?
That we have total control of our story, and that if we want to see the value in it, we can. And if you want to take the positive, like Jose was saying, take it from a positive lens, and that's your choice. And we just want to help with that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. And last couple things, just if you could let me know, I know you said them earlier, just kind of when we were talking about if somebody wants to share their story with you, but could you tell us your social media handles for Instagram and your website as well?
Yeah, so you can contact us at you can direct message us on social media. So it's We Are All One Story, spelled out exactly how it sounds, on Facebook and Instagram. And our website is weareallOnestory.net, and our YouTube channel is We Are All One Story.
Awesome. And what would be the best way to get in touch with We Are All One Story?
I would say either email or direct message on any of our social media platforms.
Okay, perfect. Well, Ralph, Jose, I cannot thank you enough, not only for being here today on the Unveil Your Voice podcast, but just for doing what you're doing. I mean, it is tremendous work. I hope and I pray that you will get to those millions and allow people to share their story. No, seriously. So thank you both so much for your doing and joining us today to chat a little bit about We Are All One Story.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
You both are so welcome. So that's all for today, everybody, but we would love for you to leave us some feedback. or subscribe. We'd love if you subscribe. And if you're sharing our podcast out there on social media, if you could share with hashtag Unveil Your Voice, we would greatly appreciate it. So thanks so much for joining again this week, everyone. And we'll see you next week.
Awesome.